And okay, cheers everyone. I am Amy Mitchell with Houses of Windsor, and this is virtual tea time with Amy. And today my special guest is Phil Spencer. Thank you for being on, Phil.
Thank you for having me.
So I put in the caption, you don't know this yet, but I put in the caption on Facebook that our special guest today is a Brit. that's the most important thing. So um, but aside from that, before we get into it, what are you drinking and where are you calling from?
So I'm currently working from home in South London in the UK. I have a cup of tea to one side to hand, ready to go. Yeah, and I'm a fine jeweler based in London in the UK.
Oh, perfect. And so I'm drinking the Houses of Windsor Holiday Spice, of course. And I usually have like a cute little teacup and saucer, but today I felt like a mug since it's chilly. I'm gonna put my hands around it. So I'm using one of my favorites. It's my Henry VIII mug. And when you heat it up, the wives' pictures disappear and it says their name and how they died or if they were divorced. It's a bit of a morbid cup, but I figure enough time has passed. It's okay. Okay, so we know each other through Rafael dos Santos,
That's right.
and I know him through BNI. And then as it turns out, you are in his chapter, but we missed each other when I visited virtually back in July.
That's right.
Yes,
I
and
think
that is
my daughter was born around then, so I think I may have been on baby duties at that point.
right. That's what I thought. Yeah. So I think, did you tell me what's your daughter's name?
Petra.
Petra. Oh, that's cute. um, I've got Piper, so another P. And my cat may jump here in a second. He's right next to me. So okay, so you're in fine jewelry, and so what do you do in fine jewelry?
So we specialize in things like engagement rings and any item of handmade jewelry. And we, in particular, we import emeralds from Colombia in South America. And we actually do quite a lot of business in the United States, I think, because emeralds are quite a popular stone there. So, yeah, that's quite a familiar market to us. And we're sort of currently expanding. We have a small office in Hatton Garden, which is the gemstone dealing district of London, along with an office in Bogota in the emerald dealing district of the capital, Colombia. So we've been established now for 7 years, growing quite rapidly, and obviously weathering out the pandemic at the moment, but
Right.
looking forward to next year, and yeah, really positive about where things are going at the moment.
Okay, that's awesome. So I'm gonna ask you some questions that I know the answer to, but that I think most people are probably like me and they don't know until they ask. Okay, so why is it important that your emeralds come from Colombia? What is the significance?
Well, Colombia's got a reputation for being the source of the finest quality emeralds in the world. They tend to produce them in a deeper color, with a clearer transparency than any of the other sources around the world. So I guess it's a bit like Italian suits or
Mhm.
German cars. They have a national a
Right,
national
right.
reputation for quality in those particular areas. So yes, I think that's definitely been a sort of a major attraction for people
Mhm.
down the ages, going back as far as the Aztecs and Incas, sort of 2,000
Oh
years.
wow. Okay, that's awesome. So that's good to know. And yes, I have some emerald things because that is my birthstone, and it was my grandmother's birthstone. So I basically have emerald stuff that she passed down to me. I have no idea where those emeralds came from. I'm guessing not Colombia, but maybe someday. But so I'm curious: is there a way to tell, like, I guess, kind of who's the customer that particularly likes emeralds aside from it being a birthstone, or is there a certain piece of jewelry that people like to put it in, like more so one than the other, or have you noticed any patterns?
Yeah, so there's a big demand for emeralds in the Far East and in China.
Okay.
Green is often regarded as a lucky color
Mm.
in Oriental culture, so there's a big sort of attraction there. But I think also it's historically it's been quite popular in Art Deco and Victorian designs,
Oh,
usually in combination with, not always, but usually in combination with diamonds, often as
mhm.
a trilogy, for example.
Okay.
So that those are some of the most popular uses for them. But really, that they're very versatile. They can be used in almost any item
Mhm.
of jewelry, and demand seems to be, yeah, increasing. And I think there's a lessening of demand for diamonds and an increase in demand for color stones, which is obviously
Mhm.
great news for us. And
Yeah.
we're sort of riding the crest of
Right.
that wave.
That's very cool. So, okay. So before I get into the main part of the show, which is not to do with business, is there anything else that you would like to say about your business?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we're arranging a conference at the moment in Bogota, with some keynote speakers, some sort of
Oh, okay.
industry experts, hopefully for April or May this year. Sorry, next year.
Right.
um, but we're in December already. That's
Right.
got
Yeah, practically this year.
so yeah, that's something we're looking forward to, and we're hoping to turn that into a webcast. Um, and obviously we'll put more information out on that on our website and on our social media pages nearer the time. But yeah, we would encourage anyone who has an interest in
Yeah,
jewelry and gemstones that's something that they may wish to get involved in, and obviously would value any sort of feedback and views and opinions that people have in relation to it.
absolutely. Awesome. That's very cool. I'll have to let the jewelers that I know in my, well, formerly in my BNI chapter, I'll let them know about it. Um, okay, so the big question is, what is your special interest, hobby, obsession that's not work related, that's like something that's yours that people know is kind of like what you geek out on?
Really, I'm quite in my spare time. I do a lot of work with the Royal Naval Reserve.
Mhm.
So that's an area, but I guess that's kind of work related. So I'll
Yeah.
skip over that. But another big passion of mine is sailing and
Oh.
offshore yachting. So in fact, last year I sailed up the east coast of the US
Hmm.
from Cape Canaveral to New York via Charleston.
Hmm.
So I've done a lot of offshore sailing of
Wow.
that kind of nature. I've entered the a race called the Fastnet race, which is quite popular, quite big
Hmm.
in the UK, but may not be familiar to many people in America. Around the coast of Ireland and back to the UK. So
Oh,
that's something
wow.
I've been involved in since I was a child.
Hmm.
And it's taken me to various parts of the world. And I've competed competitively in a number of offshore races over the last sort of 10 years or so.
Oh, wow. That's really cool. So I do remember reading that a bit about you, and thinking, so those are like the serious races, like you're not sailing for fun, right? Like everyone's doing something trying to win. Is that correct?
Yeah, so there's cruising and there's racing. So
Right.
I do a bit of both.
Okay.
I've entered quite a few. The offshore races are quite serious,
Right.
but yeah, cruising's more of a sort of fun, sunny afternoon,
Right.
with a gin and tonic in your hand type affair.
Perfect. That sounds good. So let's see. So I don't know what race it was called. The only way that this is on my radar that these boat races are a thing is that um, for a bit I worked at a place here in Florida that is called Inmarsat, and they
Okay.
did like the maritime satellites or whatever,
Yeah.
and so they'd show pictures of like some of those racing boats would have like the Inmarsat thing on it. So that's all I know.
Well, of course, Florida's a beautiful place to go sailing. You've got the fantastic weather all year round, so
Oh
it's
yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, what's like the coldest, I guess? Are most of your races cold or warm, would you say?
they tend to turn pretty cold at night, but
Yeah. I wouldn't even think about that. Yeah, how long do they last?
things like the fast nets are usually about 3 or 4 days. It depends on what the weather conditions are at the
Yeah.
time. But the race up the east coast of the states, that was about 2 weeks, but we stopped a couple of times
Whoa.
along the way.
So okay, so how does that work as far as like sleeping, eating? I'm guessing how many people are on there like taking shifts and stuff? What's going on?
It varies from boat to boat, but typically you'll be in what's known as a watch system.
Okay.
So essentially shifts. So
Hmm.
normally divide the crew into two. and you do sort of 4 or 6 hours on watch and then the same amount of time off watch. So it can be pretty tiring. You're looking at 12-hour days
Right.
for days on end, and quite physical work as well. So it
Mm-hmm.
can be quite testing, especially if in bad weather conditions. It can be
Yeah.
very demanding, but also a lot of fun as well, and a good sense
Mm-hmm.
of sort of camaraderie.
Mm-hmm.
And good sort of what we call banter,
Oh
sort of
yes. Yep. Mm-hmm.
hijinks between
Mm-hmm.
between the people on the boat, which is
That's
always fun
awesome.
to look back on afterwards.
Right. That's really fun. So do you I guess so do you have the same team like and the same boat that you use for every type of competition or like every race?
So yeah, some like the Fastnet, for example, there are a series of races that build up to it. So you're with the same team for usually for a season, and you'll compete in maybe half a dozen or so of
Mhm.
smaller races before you then qualify for the main race itself. So generally, you'll have some time to kind of build that sort of teamwork together
Okay.
before you're actually thrown into the actual race
Right.
itself. But sometimes you have more time than you do on other occasions. So it
Hmm.
all varies according to what it is that you're doing at that time.
Okay. And you said you got into this when you were a kid. So how did you get into that as a kid? Like someone do that in your family?
Yeah, so my family are quite keen sailors. So
Okay.
although I live in London, my parents have always had little holiday homes and things on the south coast of England.
Mm-hmm.
So all my school holidays and all of my weekends in the summer, I was always down
Hmm.
there
Oh, fun.
on boats.
Mm-hmm. That's really fun. And did your parents, did they do any of the racing stuff or like when did you get into the racing part?
Yeah, they did some. We used to do the what's known as the Island Race, which is a race around the Isle of Wight on the south
Mm-hmm.
coast of the UK, and bits of sort of fun, more fun related racing when children are involved.
Right.
But then it was later on I got involved more into the serious kind of blue water
Mm-hmm.
offshore racing.
That's really cool. So are you a good swimmer?
I am, but obviously things have gone very wrong if you have to if you have to resort to
You have to worry about that.
that.
Just curious. And so, okay, so then I want to know, do you have any crazy, I'm sure you have, you know, you've done this for several years, but do you have any crazy stories, like maybe the top two or three that stand out as far as scary storms or like, I don't know, serious boat issues? Like were you sinking?
We broached once on the fast net, which is where the boat blows flat on its side, and
Oh.
everything was thrown out of it essentially
Oh my God.
in the middle of the night,
Oh
which was
jeez.
certainly a bit of a shock to the system.
Yeah.
But the only good thing about it is that sailing boats always right themselves. They always end up back where they
Hmm.
should be. So
Okay.
yeah, as long as you get over the initial shock of being flat on your side, you can, you can
That's
get back quite easily. Mm.
That's crazy. So did you, okay, so if you can explain what, since we don't have visuals, but I mean, for the boats, what do the boats look like as far as how, like, how much space do you have? I'm assuming you're sleeping somewhere underneath, right? Is there like the the beds and everything are down there? Is it like very spacious or it's like very minimal? What's it, what does it look like?
It depends what kind of boat you're on. So if you're on a cruising yacht, then they tend to be quite comfortable because they're
Okay,
designed for families and
right.
they're more relaxed. So they're more like I guess like caravans,
Yeah,
caravans on the
right.
water essentially. um, but then with racing yachts, they're very sparse down below.
Hmm.
So the area that you sleep in will be literally just a bunk, a
Hmm.
few seats, and a few tables to sort of to eat your food from. But
Right.
yeah, generally pretty austere.
Wow. So like on the 2 week one that you did off of the coast of, you said New York, right? Are you in? Yeah. So what were you guys eating? Like, what do you? Do you cook anything, or is it just stuff you open up and eat something for sustenance?
It's all freeze dried, sort of boil in the
Okay.
bag type stuff. So you literally just boil it, rip the bag off,
Okay.
and eat it. So it's all quite high energy,
Yeah.
quite sort of carb heavy
Hmm.
food, but it does the job. It fills you up, keeps you
Yeah.
going. but
Yeah.
it's not the kind of thing you'd order in a restaurant.
Right, right. And then are you drinking water the whole time, or are there like special drinks that you drink to like re-energize?
Mostly fruit juices and water, and yeah, that
Yeah.
that kind of thing. You need to hydrate a lot because the salt gets
Oh,
into your system. So yeah, you can find that your throat becomes quite dry, so you have to
oh
drink
yeah.
a fair bit of water to compensate for that.
Hmm. And so do you guys drink tea? Does anybody fix tea on
We,
the boat?
we do, yeah, yeah. It keeps the boat going, especially at night when it's cold. It's
Oh yeah.
yeah, warm soup and tea and coffee
Hmm.
is a godsend.
Is there any like heat on the boat underneath where you're sleeping, or it's just body heat?
They do. I'm trying to think. Were there any heaters? I think most boats do have them, but they don't generally work unless you're plugged into mains power.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, there's it's pretty much wrapping up warm and
Okay.
the best. Actually, it was interesting sailing up the east coast of the States because we sailed out of the Gulf Stream. So we
Hmm.
left Florida, went up to
Right.
Charleston, and
Hmm.
then a couple of days out of Charleston, we left the Gulf Stream, and suddenly
Hmm.
it went from being lovely and warm
Oh
to
no.
being freezing cold because it was in the springtime. So
Right.
we suddenly saw some geography in action.
Yes. That's really cool. But so you've never had any scary storms at night or any of the stuff we see in movies?
Plenty of bad weather, yeah, yeah,
Oh, okay.
plenty of that, yeah.
Okay. That's funny. And then have you had, let's see. So you started race, I guess, do you have siblings? Did you say?
I have one older brother, yeah.
Okay. Does he do any of this or did he do any of this?
No, he absolutely hates sailing, which is quite funny.
That's great.
He turned against it, and I became very keen on it.
That's hilarious. That's really cool. And what do you have an opinion on? I only know to call them like speed boats, like the non-sail boats.
They tend to be good fun. I mean, I've done a bit of powerboating myself, so
Hmm.
I do enjoy it. Some sailors are a bit anti,
Hmm. That's
but
the thing.
I think that it's good fun, but only on a flat calm day. As soon as the waves pick up, speedboats tend
Hmm.
to fly all over the place, and you'd much rather be on a sailing yacht.
Right. So, okay, so say that if someone wanted to get into this, like and a complete beginner, where would you tell them to start? What should they do first?
Essentially, is to volunteer to be a crewman on one of the races,
Oh, okay.
because you don't need much experience to some of the some of the less extreme races. You can volunteer as a novice,
Hmm.
and you pick up the sort of the skills that you need as you go
Hmm.
along. I'm not sure what they have in the US. In the UK, there's the Royal Yachting Association, which is
Hmm.
an organisation that does qualifications for
Oh, okay.
sailing, and there must be a comparable thing
I'm sure we have something like that.
in the States.
It's
Yeah.
just not on my radar.
And yes, there's various courses that you can do both on the water and in classrooms,
Hmm.
that give you the kind of the skills and the confidence to then go out on the water in more and more challenging conditions.
Hmm. Would they let you volunteer in a race if you've like not even been on a regular sailboat and you've done like
Some
zero?
some races do, yeah.
Okay.
There's a race called the what's it called? It was called the BT Challenge. I think it's changed name now, but there's a round the world race, uh,
Okay.
where novices are allowed to do an actual
Oh, wow.
global race, which is a pretty challenging thing to do. It
Yeah.
takes about 6 months, uh,
Whoa.
but yeah, yeah. It depends on how sort of how brave you are, I guess, as to,
Right.
to
Yeah.
what point you dip your toe in the water.
Right. Have you ever done that one or wanted to do the one?
I haven't. No, I've the probably the longest one I've done is the one up the east coast of the States.
Hmm.
More because I haven't really had the time, unfortunately,
Right.
to do it.
You don't
Because
have 6 months to
unfortunately not. No,
to
and,
just
with a newborn
disappear.
baby in a business, it's a bit
Right.
too long, unfortunately.
Yeah, I wouldn't expect that you have a lot of time for that. And I wouldn't expect that your wife would be pleased at this point.
No.
Yeah, if you didn't do it before, you don't get to do it now. So that's really cool though. I mean, I think I find all of that very scary, but I think it's really neat that people do it. I've not even been on a cruise ship yet. I'm like a resort person. If we're gonna do some kind of tropical vacation, just put me in like one spot. But now that I live in Florida, everyone, we've got like all the cruise ships, outside of COVID time that are at Port Canaveral. So like we're supposed, it's much easier to do now that I live down here. So maybe someday. But yeah, so I can't imagine being on a minimalist race boat. So if you are a novice and you're volunteering, what kind of stuff can they trust you to do? what do you do? Do you make the tea? What do you do?
Usually it starts with things like working the ropes, so sort of
Oh, okay.
controlling the sheets, which are the ropes that control the sails.
Mm-hmm.
Normally you start with those sort of simple tasks, and winching, which is the process of
Oh.
winding in and out
Mm-hmm.
sails. And then over time you progress as a helmsman, and ultimately you become a watch leader,
Mm-hmm.
and then you get involved in the navigational side and the actual
Mm-hmm.
leadership of the
Right.
boat,
Oh, that's
which is sort of something that takes a bit more time and effort and experience to
right.
master.
So I'm guessing are you part of whatever the top thing is, the navigation team? Is that your role?
On the US trip, I was what's known as the first mate, so I was
Mm-hmm.
the second in charge of the boat.
Okay. Okay. Very cool. um, so I guess let's see. So do you have like in these races, do they have a way I mean, I'm sure they can track you, like they know where you are, but is there something set in place that like they can find you if you need help like immediately? Are there like
Yes,
people, is there a boat nearby or something?
they're. I mean, the boats are equipped with radios, and also a device called an EPIRB, which is a
Mhm.
satellite distress beacon. So
Okay.
if you have a major problem, you can press a button, and it sends
Okay.
a signal to a satellite, which in theory is global. So
Right.
you should be pretty well covered.
Okay. Okay. That's good. Okay, so then I have to ask you, do you have any ghost or alien stories?
It's interesting. I was scratching my head a moment ago thinking about this. The nearest I've got is when I was a child. My dad grew up in a house in Devon, which is in the countryside in
Mm-hmm.
southwest England. Um, and the house that he lived in was on the grounds of an old monastery,
Mm-hmm.
um, which was burnt down in the Reformation in the sort of
Oh,
16th
right.
century.
Yeah.
Um, and I remember walking around as a child, walking around
Mm-hmm.
the grounds of this old house. And on a really hot summer's day, I remember feeling really cold, and a real sort of sense of foreboding of what was going on around me.
Right.
I didn't see or hear anything, but
Yeah,
I just
yeah.
remember that experience, and it really terrified me.
Oh my
But of course, yeah, we live in a country that's the most haunted country in the world. So
God. That's
I think
right.
if you want to see ghosts, then England's the best place to come to.
Right, that's what I figured. So I'll have to ask you because I have a feeling, or like I just have this theory that when I go stay in old places in England or United Kingdom, like I am not, it doesn't freak me out as much as it does in the US. And like our old stuff is still like 1800s or something, so it's not even that old. But I feel like all of our ghost stories that we tell, like everything is about like possession or their evil spirits or whatever. And I feel like all of your ghost stories are just like, oh, like you'll see them, they'll walk down the hallway, like no big deal. So, am I accurate in that? Like, do you guys have scary ghost stories, or are they
um,
all just kind of like, and they're there?
I've not really encountered it. No, I think most of ours do just sort of wander around in the corridors.
Because the American ghosts have a lot of angst they take with them. But yeah, that's funny because I was had well, actually it was someone else Raphael introduced me to, but she lives in I don't know if she's in particular in London, but anyway, she's in England. But she had ghost and alien stories. And
Oh,
her
really?
ghost, yeah. And I said, usually people have one or the other, but she had both. But the ghost story was the house that she still currently lives in. Apparently, like there just used to be lots of like loud like knocks and footsteps and things upstairs when like her kids were for sure asleep. She'd like ask them like what's up, and and then they moved out and then like still happening. And I think there was some other weird things that happened, so they essentially had the house cleansed and like and then it stopped. They didn't have it anymore. So they got rid of whatever the ghost or spirit was. But I don't have any, so that's why I like to ask people what theirs are. My closest one is that I went on an underground tour in Edinburgh, so in Scotland. So do you know those tunnels? Like how, I try to tell everyone who hasn't been there, it's like it's not like the London Underground where it's a train. It's just like these dark, empty like tunnels for walking. But my friend and I went on a ghost tour of those, and it was very spooky. We didn't feel or see anything or hear anything, but the ghost tour did an excellent job of like freaking us all out. I mean, we're in a big group, but it's so dark down there. And like and then they're telling us like the stories of course, of course something happened where it's like there's a fire. I feel like there's always like a fire in whatever ghost story. Like where a whole bunch of people die in the fire. And then they like tell us a story about what's happened on a previous ghost tour where like someone was holding their mom's hand. They turn out the lights because this is what they do just to give you a feeling of what it would be like back then without any lights in the tunnels. And then when they turned the lights back on, this kid was like over in the corner, like inexplicably. And the mom, like they both claimed they never let go of each other's hand. so, so we were all, and then, so they tell us this story right before they turn the lights out on us. So they primed us very well. We were really scared, but that didn't happen to our tour group. So that's as close as I've got. But have you ever done any of the things in Edinburgh?
No, I've been there a couple of times, but only for sort of short visits. I've never really spent any considerable time there. So
Yeah.
that's something I must check out the next time I'm
Yeah.
there.
That one definitely is fun. Yeah. And they had like in the lobby of the place, where you buy your tickets. And then I think at the end you end with like a shot of like, whiskey or something. But they they had like photos where people had sent them pictures after the fact of like scratch marks and different things like that they found markings like after their ghost tour and sent pictures in of it. So super, yeah, super fun. But that was, I guess, the I don't know, the scariest of ghosts as far as in England that I know of. But yeah, so no aliens, no friends with crazy alien stories.
I've never encountered an alien. No, no,
Yeah.
not to my knowledge, anyway.
Right, right. Well, yeah, yeah. We probably interact with them all the time. That's awesome. Well, I have to say thank you so much for being a guest on my show. This is super fun. And it's always appreciated when we have someone call in from London. Makes you extra special. um, but yeah, so I guess, do you have anything else you would like to say on any subject matter?
No, thank you for having me. It's been an interesting hour or so. It's been certainly an eye opener.
Okay. Did I ask you enough boat questions? Has anyone ever asked you that many boating questions?
Not in one go. No, no.
Okay. Well, great. Then I did my job. Well, thank you so much. And thank you everyone for watching, whoever watched live and whoever watches into eternity, because we'll go up on YouTube. So we'll be there forever. Okay, so thank you everyone for watching. This is Virtual Tea Time with Amy. And cheers, everyone. Thank you, Phil. Bye.